I wonder what your thoughts are on the language that we're hearing from Vladimir Putin, conditions coming from Moscow that would clearly be unacceptable for Kyiv, and a president of Russia here that appears to be in no hurry to reach a truce or a ceasefire. What do you think we'll hear next from Vladimir Putin?
Thanks for having me on. I've dealt with Putin in both the Bush and Trump administrations, and my short answer is it's too early to tell, but none of this is unexpected, either with Putin or any other adversary or competitor that we're negotiating with. They announced their, for domestic consumption, their maximalist positions, and then we put ours on the table and we go back and forth. What's important here is that now the U.S., Zelensky and the Ukrainians and the Europeans and NATO are all united, as we just heard from Secretary General Rutte, on presenting a common position to Russia. It's up to Russia now. The ball, as Secretary Rubio said, is in their court.
Well, on that point, Ambassador, earlier today we spoke with Kailey Hutchison, the former U.S. ambassador to NATO, and asked her specifically about Vladimir Putin and whether or not he is a credible negotiator in this, how seriously the U.S. should be taking his words during this process. This is what she told us.
We can take him seriously, but we're dealing with a despot. We're dealing with a person that we're going to have to play hardball with, along with Ukraine and all of our European allies. And absolutely, we should take him seriously, and we should start playing hardball with him.
Ambassador, are you seeing hardball being played yet?
I am. First of all, it's good to see Ambassador Kailey Hutchison. We work very well together, pushing back against Russia in Syria, for example, in the last administration, the first Trump administration. I would say that we certainly saw a hardball against the Russians on Trump's part when he ordered the destruction of a whole Wagner battalion crossing the Euphrates in 2018, or striking twice on Russian ally Assad's nuclear weapons and other capabilities to stop, rather chemical weapons, to stop chemical weapons use against his own people. We saw him imposing sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 gas line to Europe. So I think Trump can be tough. He has reinstated all of our weapons and our intelligence to Ukraine. They're keeping Ukraine in the fight. They will continue to keep Ukraine in the fight. If Putin doesn't want to have a ceasefire, then he's going to have to face a Ukraine that will continue to be supported even more strongly, as Secretary General Rutte just said, by the Europeans and by America.
Ambassador, you made the point you've worked with Vladimir Putin and with Donald Trump on some very difficult issues, and so you might have a unique perspective on what Donald Trump posted on social media. He wrote, "At this very moment, in all caps, thousands of Ukrainian troops are completely surrounded by the Russian military and in a very bad and vulnerable position." He writes that he strongly requested to President Putin that their lives be spared. It almost sounds like something Putin could have written himself. What do you make of the strategy in going public with this?
You get a lot of stray electrons from Donald Trump. What he's referring to is the Ukrainian forces in Kursk, that piece of Russian territory that the Ukrainians took last summer. They're being pushed back. That's not essential. It would be good as a bargaining chip. The key is the Ukrainian lines inside Ukraine. They have been holding now pretty much for the last 6 months. I think they will continue to hold.
Ambassador, while we have you, given your experience in Iraq and Turkey, I want to ask you about other negotiations still at play right now between Israel and Hamas, which coincidentally some of the same characters are involved in, including the U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff. Our understanding is Hamas made an offer today to release all of the remaining American hostages, including one who is still alive, but it was described by mediators, including Steve Witkoff, as them claiming flexibility publicly while privately making demands that are entirely impractical without a permanent ceasefire. How hopeful are you for forward progress on this front?
Well, we already have forward progress because, again, thanks to the Trump administration and specifically Steve Witkoff, who has the lead in both negotiations, we've pushed not only Hamas but the Israelis to set up the initial ceasefire and the return of some 30-plus hostages, but also the continuation of the ceasefire on a step-by-step basis. Now, Witkoff is right. Hamas is not dealing, big surprise, in a fair and honest way with us and with the Israelis. But the point is, again, Trump and his people, Witkoff in both cases, are leading this, and we're not relying on the Ukrainians in the one case or Israel in the other. And that's normal. Since Harry Truman and Eisenhower in Korea in the early 1950s, in the end, if we're involved in a conflict, even in a supporting role, we have to play a very central role. And allies and partners don't like it, but they live with it because without us, they're, as President Trump said, don't have many cards to play.
Mm-hmm. So if we don't see a phase 2, when will we see the next chapter in this saga, Ambassador? Is it time for a new structure?
No, the structure we can toy with. Is it a 3-phase or a 4-phase or 1.5 phases? Those are diplomatic niceties. And, you know, the number of hostages released for the number of Palestinian terrorists usually released from Israeli prisons. Those are less important than the core of what's holding this up. That is a discussion that was inherent in the whole structure back in May when President Biden announced it, of Israel and Hamas, through indirect negotiations, deciding on the fate of Hamas in Gaza and the future of Gaza. Israel's position is, we've defeated you. You can never govern or risk our country again out of Gaza. Hamas doesn't want to accept those conditions. So that's the basic issue that's behind everything here. And that may be hard to solve without a further round of fighting.